We're here at the corner of Artemis Street and Rova Ave, where a artillery strike by the Kiev regime just rocked this intersection. I was about 100 meters away at the time, and as you can see, the devastation is incredible. This is a normal occurrence for the people of Donbass, the people of Donetsk. They are living under this threat every day, and I just got a taste myself. I watched a massive explosion rock this corner, huge ball of sparks and flames here at my hotel. Shrapnel from the explosion shattered several windows, and that was pretty lucky. I feel pretty lucky right now. If I'd have been 30 seconds, a minute faster to get back to my hotel, I was walking back from a restaurant. If I'd been just a few seconds faster, I would have been killed. It's hard to describe this as anything other than terror tactics. This is fascism in action, and it's why so many people here are deeply appreciative of Russian Federation forces, for finally acting to put an end to this madness that's been happening for 8 years. 8 years of living with this.
Fiorella. For the last 9 years, fam, the people of the Donbass have been feeling these missiles, these weapons of war supplied by the West in civilian areas, and also now targeting journalists. One of the journalists that you just saw right there on the screen is going to join us today. He's not only a fellow journalist, but he's a personal friend. We were able to observe elections with him in Honduras and as well as Nicaragua. And thank you so much for joining us, our good friend, Wyatt Reed. How you doing, Wyatt?
I'm all right. Thank you for asking, Pasta. It's really good to be here with y'all. I was definitely a ball of nerves Saturday, yesterday. I've been on a steady treatment of whiskey and good food, and it's been calming me down a little bit. Apparently, this is the normal treatment for how this happens. Immediately after that, I came back into the hotel. I sprinted in directly to the door, and I kind of got a chance to relax with different hotel workers, hotel guests, journalists, and we kind of all bonded over this near-death experience. We drank a little bit of whiskey and chilled out, and I was told, welcome to Donetsk, brother. This was your baptism by fire, and now you understand what it's like to be here. That's definitely the way that I feel right now. I feel very blessed to have survived that experience. Not my first interaction with the Kiev regime. My first one was 2 weeks ago when they put me on their official kill list, Mirodvorets, their official government hit list. This is my first physical interaction, and I feel very blessed to have survived my first interaction with Zelensky and company. And so, yeah, that's how I'm feeling, and I feel a lot better now that I'm back with you guys. It's good to see some familiar faces.
Bam! He got rocked by CNN and the Zelensky empire for being an election integrity activist. That's what I want to point out first, because when he went to observe that referendum, that's when he got on the list. Go ahead, fam.
Well, first of all, Wyatt, nice background you're in. It's very Russian. Actually, head back to Moscow Friday, so I just recognize the decor. But you know, what you said in your video was very important, because this is what the people of the region have been experiencing for almost 9 years. And of course, obviously, a lot of us were worried about you, but you said it yourself. This is something that happens all the time. I know for a fact that our journalists at RT are constantly targeted at their hotels. Specifically, recent, I think it was Murat Gazdiev who was targeted, and there was just all of them all the time. And also Eva Bartlett has talked about how this is like something that you know you see. It depends on where you're walking on the street, right? Where you're like either whether you're facing east or west has so much to do with it. There's so many precautions you have to take, and it's like you're not used to being not. I mean, most of us aren't used to being in this sort of mindset where we have to be really afraid that there's going to be shelling coming down at us, because even when we were in Honduras or Nicaragua, you know, where especially Honduras, where we know that there was so much danger in terms of the past government that was there, this cartel type of government, it still wasn't like you were being constantly in fear of shelling. How has that psychologically, how did that shift happen for you as a journalist on the ground when this wasn't something you were used to experiencing?
Well, it's crazy. I don't know how else to describe it. It's crazy. It feels like you have to be a little bit crazy to live here. But of course, for the people that were born here, who grew up here, who don't have anywhere else to go, they have no alternative. They can't do anything else. And so, you know, I've heard many people wishing me support, wishing me well. Some people kind of saying, well, like maybe you should go further away. Maybe you shouldn't be there. To me, it's like, well, if the mainstream media, if the Western press would come down here and cover it, you bet your ass I wouldn't be here. I would be back in Barcelona. I would be, you know, hanging out, chilling, doing my thing. But there's no one here. I can count the number of English-speaking journalists on one hand. So the fact that they refuse to show it, somebody has to show it. You know what I mean? So to me, it's a threat. It's intimidation. It happened within an hour of me communicating my location to a colleague on WhatsApp. I'm not using WhatsApp anymore. It's happened within 2 hours of me arriving here at this location. It's hard not to feel personally targeted, given the fact that I'm like you, Fee, now, you know, labeled Russia state-affiliated media. Even the fact that, you know, Russian government officials retweet a lot of the stuff that I say. And
the both of you guys are not verified,
kill
too.
list.
I don't want to interrupt, but the both of you guys are not verified, and
No,
now
he's
you're
verified.
labeled. No, he's not.
He's
Are you verified?
Yes.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Yes.
I'll go back to shutting up and staying in the corner. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a good 3-4 months of being just normal Twitter verified persona before they slapped me with the scarlet letter Russia state affiliated media. But yeah, I'm verified. And for whatever the fuck that means, you know, who knows what that means. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just, you know, it's different, Wyatt, because like I said, we've been on the ground, we covered elections, and you were covering the referendum in the Donbass, right? Remember when we were in Nicaragua and they were saying all this stuff about the polls closing, the New York Times was lying, and you and Johnny were just like battling it, and you put that tweet up, and it was like that, you know, that's what we're used to. We're used to battling the mainstream media because they lie all the time. In the referendum, though, how was that? Because everybody, even people who are like somewhat sympathetic to Russia, were like, there is no way that 99%, close to 90% of the people, right, were voting in favor for this. Why is that like a, you know, a faulty assumption to make in this scenario?
Well, there's a couple incorrect assumptions that go into that kind of narrative. The first one is, well, let's clarify. We're not talking about 99% of the entire population. We're talking about the people that voted, right? We're talking about the percentage of the people that were able to vote. And I will say, everyone that I talked to personally seemed to have voted in favor of Russian realignment with the Russian Federation. And that's how I describe it, because we're talking about territories here that historically were always aligned with Russia, right? For going back generations. We're talking about people who have this bond of kinship with Russia, with the Soviet Union. We're not talking about Lvov. We're not talking about Kiev. We're talking about Donetsk, Lugansk, Kherson, Zaporozhye. regions where people, the majority, especially here in Donetsk and Lugansk, have this very unbreakable kind of bond of kinship. And 8 years of artillery strikes, 8 years of nonstop propaganda by oligarchs like Kolomoisky have been unable to break these bonds. And in many ways, it's hard not to interpret these particular strikes. If I can't interpret them as a strike on me personally, well, I interpret them as a strike on this hotel, which is known to host international journalists. And I interpret them more broadly as just a strike on people who have dared to go against Zelensky, go against the Kiev regime. And this is kind of their punishment, right? This is what they deserve in the eyes of those people to be subjected to for refusing to subject themselves to this horror, for refusing to give up their Russian identity, their Russian speaking language. And they've been deemed basically surplus population. You hear this kind of language, this very openly Nazi language, openly fascist language used frequently by government officials, certainly by media. So, to me, it's kind of no surprise that of the people that went out and voted, the vast majority voted to go back to be with Russia, because it's not just about these people hate us. It's also about Russia is the only force that's going to give us the basic social services that people who live in modern societies depend on, come to expect: roads, electricity, jobs, water, all of these things that the Ukrainian regime has been intentionally depriving people in this region of. They've been intentionally preventing them from having these things because they want to stunt their growth as a people, and even as individuals, as children. They want them to be, weaker and less able to defend themselves.
Yeah. Oh,
There
you go.
That, to me, it's hard not to separate that reality, what the Kiev regime wants to impose on these people, from that decision to overwhelmingly vote in favor of realignment with the Russian Federation.
Well, let's talk about the thing that got you on the kill list, because you've been in the room with the Convo Couch when we ask questions about elections. I think, Honduras was so much fun because after Nicaragua, what we experienced, me, you, Fee, Terry, we were communicating on the election kind of level. Let me ask you 3 questions about the referendum that you witnessed. Number 1, were the Russians running the election, or was it the people of Donbass and the people and the Russians were just providing security?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, yes, these referendums were called for by the authorities and the people of Donetsk, Lugansk, Kherson, Zaporozhye. I've met a number of these authorities. I got a chance to go out when I witnessed voting in Kherson with Kirill Stremesov, the vice governor of the Kherson Territorial Administration, who himself narrowly avoided being assassinated by Zelensky forces. Just a few weeks ago, his driver was killed in a bombing attack. He very fortunately survived. And I got a chance to meet this guy and spend the day with him and go out and see firsthand. We saw the scene of a HIMARS attack, of an attack on a village in the Kherson region. It was incredible to see firsthand what the U.S. weapons do to a site. And to be clear, this was an apartment complex that was totally devastated by this HIMARS. This HIMARS left a crater at least 10 feet deep and 20 feet across. It's insane. The artillery strike on my hotel, that was insane. But a HIMARS strike, that is a whole nother level. And even on my train ride down to Rostov from Moscow, to be able to come to Donetsk, you have to usually go to Rostov. And so I took a night train, and one of other passengers in my train car was a Chechen soldier who was on medical leave because he himself had been concussed in a HIMARS strike. And, you know, just to have that experience of talking to somebody who's gone through this, and also to, you know, kind of have to explain to him, like, look, man, I'm an American. I hate that my government did this to you. And for him to have to say to me, like, look, man, you better not be a fucking spy because I will fuck you up if you're a fucking spy, you know? And, you know, and for me to be like, I get it, man. You know what I mean? Like, I would feel the same way if I was in your position. You know, if some, you know, American who is the people that you know, brought this onto them, it's an understandable feeling. But the other thing is, and like you guys know, having spent so much time in Latin America, people here don't, first of all, they don't hate Ukrainians. They hate the Kiev regime, right? They don't hate Americans. They hate our government. They hate our regime. They hate the Biden regime. And so that's so crucial to get across, that people here, by and large, very much understand that we are not our government, and our government is not us by any means. Our government is an oppressive force, just like the Zelensky regime is an oppressive force for many of the people in central and eastern Ukraine. They want to oppress them, just like they want, like our governments, our so-called governments, want to oppress us. So that's an important thing to keep in mind.
So really quickly, I just want to answer these three questions really quickly, just so we can, because we all understand. We were in Nicaragua together, right? Fee was talking about it. These are pantomime elections, and we're going through the whole process going, no. So you were clear. The people of Donbass ran the elections. The Russians just provided security. The Russians didn't run it. Am I right when I say that?
That is correct. Yes, these are elections that were called for and run by people in these regions. I will say a lot of the voting did have to happen in areas like Sevastopol, Crimea, Moscow, because that's where the refugees had to come to seek shelter. Yeah. The vast majority of people who have fled from Ukraine have gone to Russia. That's another thing you don't hear about. They're not in Poland. They're in Russia because that's where they feel more comfortable and that's where they feel safer.
And the second question is, was it hand-marked paper ballots or were there electronic machines?
All hand-marked, very simple, very clear. Do you support joining back with the Russian Federation? Da or niet. It's very obvious, very clear. If you don't want your vote to be seen, you crease your paper. You put it in. You crease your paper before you put it in the voting box. You know.
The last question, was it a public count made for people to see? Did you hear what are the two choices? Niet, and Fam probably would know better. Da and yet. What is it?
So my understanding is yes. I'm not like an election integrity specialist like you guys are.
Well, you are now.
Kind of
you are now, pal.
So I didn't witness the counting of the ballots.
Okay.
But from everybody that I talked to, I didn't speak to a single person who said anything about like, yeah, we want Zelensky to liberate us from, you know, being treated like human beings. You know, everyone that I talked to dozens of people, and I talked to mothers. I talked to this woman who spent 2 weeks trying to find her 81-year-old mother, and I spoke to both of them. Her 81-year-old mother had spent 2 months in her basement, and they said only friends from Moscow helped us. Nobody from Kiev wanted to come and bring us down. I spoke to another 70-something-year-old man who said, you know, my son is serving in the Russian Federation forces right now, and tears in his eyes. He couldn't stop crying. He said, I wish that the so-called Western journalists would have to spend 1 day in our shoes, because if they did, they would understand what they're doing to us. And, you know, they never will, though. That's the thing. These fake journalists, these people that present us, you and me, Fee especially, as Kremlin propagandists, they'll never set foot in Donetsk. That's the funny thing. And they will never set foot here. Because why? Because if they did, they would subject themselves to what the Russian leaning populations of these territories have been subjected to for 8 years. They would potentially die. They would be subjected to what I was subjected to, which is likely a 155 millimeter, likely U.S. supplied artillery strike that very nearly killed me. Thank God it didn't. Thank God I was 30 seconds slower. Thank God I walk slow. And they'll never do it because, you know, first of all, they don't want to subject themselves to this real danger. You see the BBC reporter that was like hiding in a trench. I don't know if you guys saw this. He pretended to be on the front lines, and you can see this woman in the background looking at him like, what are you doing? And he's pretending that he's being shelled. They don't actually want to subject themselves to the real violence that they are encouraging constantly. But secondly, if they did, they would have only one thing to show. And the only thing that they could possibly show is the artillery strikes that are undeniably coming from Ukraine, because they're coming from the west. My apartment right here faces north. You know, if you guys want to take a little tour, I will show you right here in the corner
Sure.
the bombed out.
Why not?
I'm happy to show you. I'm happy to show you the exact specific effects of what happened the other night. Within 2 hours of me coming here, you can see here is the after effects of the little present that I got from the Zelensky regime. You can see right here, boarded up walls, shattered out glass. It's incredible. You know, this is what people have been dealing with for close to 9 years, not just 8 years, close to 9 years. And that's, you know, normal to people here. Yesterday, there was a low-flying jet that passed over the hotel, and luckily it was Russian Federation forces, but people are just so conditioned now to this level of potential violence that everybody here in the hotel lobby hit the deck and just flung themselves onto the floor. The guy that I was standing with threw himself behind this column, and about 15 seconds later, we realized, okay, we haven't been hit. 10-15 seconds later, so everybody just gets back up and they go back to eating their meals and drinking what they're drinking, and that's just what people, and this is just how people have to live, you know. And so, you know, to me, when we talk about the referendums especially, it's like, well, no wonder all these people voted for it. This is what they've been dealing with. Of course they voted for it this way. And this is, again, a perspective that you're just not allowed to hear in the West. And if you say it, you're a Kremlin stooge, you're a Putin puppet, and you're gonna get harassed, you're gonna get delegitimized, you're gonna get death threats constantly. I'm getting constant like death threats and people wishing me to die. And you know, when I report them, of course, Twitter doesn't give a shit. They don't do anything about it. Because now you're allowed to wish death on people who are either Russian or who express sympathy with Russians. So, you know, to me, we're just living in a absolute Looney Tunes Alice in Wonderland universe where up is down, left is right, nothing makes sense, and if you point out any of it, then you deserve death too.
Yeah. So right after, right, you were targeted. That hotel was targeted. And this was also after the Crimean Bridge was also targeted. Russia responded within 48 hours or so, right? Putin had said from the beginning, if any of these territories are attacked, Russia will back them. Well, so Putin responded, and the media immediately has nonstop the horrible images coming out of Kiev and just Ukraine and all these people, these innocent civilians that have been targeted by Russia, and all of this constantly, completely ignoring, right, everything that happened constantly for the last 9 years, but even the most recent attacks that have been happening in the Donbass region, and also minimizing and dismissing the Crimean Bridge attack that killed 3 civilians, right? So as somebody that is there, I don't know if Wyatt's there. Is he there?
It looks like we're losing him for a little bit. It's kind of going in and out. So
okay. But fam, you want to pick it up right now? You want to say anything? while we get him
Well,
back?
no. I mean, I can play a video. They have one of his videos ready from
Okay.
his Twitter if you want to do that while he comes back in. But I think he might be here. He's trying another thing. Let's see if that works. He's got 2 Wyatt Reeds. He looks like his internet's a little wonky. Let me just play this really quick, guys.
Yeah.
Check it out. This is what Wyatt put up. He said, Ukrainian volunteer detachment commander brags about disappearing those accused of filming AFU rockets. We haven't got time to put them in jail. He jokes that so many victims have been murdered that Ukraine would have to take a census to determine the number. And Wyatt put down, like, how many times do they have to keep doing this and admitting their guilt before something is done? So check it out. I'm going to mute us really quick, guys. Convo Couch. Wyatt Reed will be here shortly.
А коректувальники були у вас?
Конечно, були. Конечно, були.
Вирахували їх?
Ну, конечно.
Угу.
Тоже десь не встигли їх в тюрму посадити, десь пропали вони.
Да. Біда. У вас
Біда.
пропадають люди.
Біда.
Та в Росії
Да,
курять.
треба хоч
Щось
після
таке
війни
робиться.
зробити перепис, скільки не вистачає народу в районі, бо трохи є.
Угу. Біда прямо.
Да, біда велика.
А коректувальники були у вас?
Звісно, були. Конечно, були.
Вирахували їх?
Ну, конечно.
Угу.
Тоже десь не встигли їх в тюрму посадити, десь пропали вони.
Да. Біда. У вас
Біда.
пропадають люди. Та
Біда.
в Росії
Да,
курять.
треба хоч
Щось
після
таке
війни
робиться.
зробити перепис, скільки не вистачає народу в районі, бо трохи є.
Угу. Біда прямо.
Да, біда велика.
Fam, big losses. We had to disappear them because we don't have time or the space to put them in jail. That was on Wyatt Reed's Twitter that he put up about how many times we have to witness this stuff, these criminals, the actions that they take. We saw a video about 6 months ago, I think, when it first started, with a lot of Ukrainian soldiers shooting Russians in the knees, in the legs, and leaving them for dead. Fam, your thoughts on that? Because I don't know how long they can hide this for, the fact that they are Nazis, the fact that they are fascist. And I don't use that term fascist too lightly. You know what I'm saying? You understand? I use it like the Benito Mussolini style. But this is something different. These are actually, descendants of Nazis, of the actual fascists. So go ahead, fam, while we get Wyatt kind of focused on it.
so-
Wyatt, we just played your video, by the way. Sorry, fam.
Yeah, so no, Wyatt, I was just asking you, all of the media, right? The media is freaked out. They ignored the Crimea Bridge. They dismissed it. They completely dismiss all the Nazism, like Pasta just showed in this video. They don't even hide it, these people. It's the West that wants to hide it. They're proud of how they feel about Russians and how, they hate them and they want them dead. They don't hide it. So
Right.
how was the aftermath of after you guys were targeted at the hotel and the Crimean Bridge was targeted, and yet of course Russia responds, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, the media is going insane. Russia is killing civilians. Look at these innocent people. I even saw it on my end from friends who have no idea what's going on. They're like, oh my God, Russia is killing civilians in Ukraine. It's that emotional manipulation. And how was it on your end experiencing that after having had the experience you had?
Yeah, so how many people were killed in these strikes yesterday? 12 civilians. Over 100 cruise missile strikes hit all throughout Ukraine, and 12 civilians were killed. There were 24 civilians killed here when just one cluster bomb went off in a Ukrainian strike on Donetsk earlier this year. Hit 24 civilians, just one out of probably close to 50 cluster munitions. One of them successfully went off, and it took out 24 people. So we're talking about 100 cruise missile strikes, and this is the obvious. So the New York Times, I'm not sure if you saw this, they put out an article trying to explain this away as, oh, it means that the Russian weapons have been degraded and they just aren't very effective. No, the Russian weapons took out the entire power grid throughout Ukraine yesterday right? They took
Yeah.
out the entire power grid throughout the vast majority of the country. They took out electricity, they took out the internet, they took out the communications of the UCROPs, as they're called here, and they only killed 12 civilians. So that means they're ineffective. They must be, getting old. They're probably old Soviet weapons. So they didn't. This is how it's portrayed,
Right.
and this is how they portray strikes here in Donetsk. They try to pretend that the Russians are bombing their own people. They try to pretend that that these strikes on these civilian centers are actually Russia killing the people that are desperately trying to be Russian, which makes no sense just on the surface. But then even when you investigate, it's like, and I had a ton of trolls flooding my mentions in this video that I posted, trying to pretend that, I staged this entire event with the Russian Foreign Ministry and the Russian MOD. We all
Good
got together
job,
and we
buddy.
sat down and we said, "Hey, let's fake a video, and I'm gonna go stand out next to your artillery strike and just wait for the moment right after it, and then I'm gonna start rolling." And I'm such a good fucking actor, because you guys know me, such a good fucking actor. I'm just gonna jump into character and whoa, it's nonsense. It's insane. You have to be insane to believe it, or you have to be totally caught up in this Western propaganda and totally brainwashed to the level that you can't accept something that you or me or Fee that says other. And this is why people immediately discard it. This is why I'm constantly flooded with people that when I say just factual information, they say, "Oh, Russia state affiliated media, Kremlin propagandist."
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
well, you have no other way to respond. You have nothing else to say. You can't respond to the facts. So you attack my character. You attack who I am. None of these people seem to care that Radio Free Europe is a CIA project that is funded entirely by the United States government. Isn't labeled obviously by big tech. They're not subjected to this scarlet letter that means that their videos get totally sent into a black hole. It's not even suppressed. It's sent into a black hole. Like, if I post videos on my own personal account, I get more likes than views on them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't make
Yeah.
sense.
Same.
It's like, it's insane. And I remember telling you a little bit about this, Fee, like,
Yeah.
hey, like, just by the way, you're working for RT, so you're not going to be able to publish videos anymore because they're just going to be sent into a black hole. I had to create a new account, and it's called Ukrainian Crimes, and so I publish my reports about the crimes that the Kiev regime is committing under this new account called Ukrainian Crimes. I have to retweet, quote tweet all my posts there on my own account to be able to have them seen or viewed, because otherwise they just get sent into a black hole. So this is it's like we're in an information war, and
Yeah.
that's the way that they perceive it. That's the way they treat us. And to me, it's like, I consider myself to be, on some level, I don't really believe in quote unquote objective journalism, because I believe that all of us come from a certain background. We all have our certain ideas and our own beliefs, and that colors the way that we interact with each other and the world. And I kind of embrace that. I consider myself to be an advocacy journalist. I consider myself to be somebody who's out here showing the truth, yes, but I do have certain beliefs, and that obviously colors the way that I view the world, and I make no secrets about that. But now this is verboten. Now this is like totally off limits. Now you're not allowed to say this kind of stuff, and if you do, you get labeled, tarred, feathered, your reputation destroyed, and now, even in the more extreme cases, you get physically targeted. You get subjected to artillery strikes. It's absolutely insane. In a rational world, there would have been serious outrage over the attack, the third time in 2 months, on a hotel known to host international journalists. Instead, that's deemed as going against Ukrainian interests. It's deemed as being pro-Russian. So, I was supposedly Ryan Grimm was going to reach out to me about this. You know, The Intercept was going to interview me about this. I haven't heard a damn word from them, and I don't expect to anytime soon.
Grim job.
But they
Yeah. Ryan
supposedly expressed
Grim
interest
job.
in hearing
That's
what
what we call him. Yeah. and
yeah.
and this is the stuff they're printing instead. I don't know if you can see the screen, but it's all about propaganda, right? It's all about in southern Ukraine, signs of low Russian morale amid retreat. It's like they can't get their bullshit straight. Which is it? Russia's on the move and they're bombing civilians, or now they're just retreating and Ukrainians are making gains in the south. You know, I mean, it's like they can't even make up their friggin' mind. It's just one propaganda piece after another propaganda piece.
It doesn't make sense, and it doesn't have to make sense.
Right.
You know, it doesn't have to make sense because the people that believe in like Ukraine. I mean, it's the same thing with. Honestly, on some level, it was. You guys were right about the way that the Vax campaign was used to kind of delegitimize opposition and to present opposition to your perspective as an existential threat to human life. The way that was taken and ran with was totally utilized when it comes to Russia, Ukraine stuff.
yeah.
That anybody who dissents from this, they are putting Ukrainian lives in jeopardy
Right.
and must be silenced at all costs. Free speech be damned.
Yeah.
You know, all these principles that we're supposed to adhere to out the window. And that's part of the reason why it's like, okay, so Russia kicks out these CNN fuckers, and we're supposed to be, you know, I don't even remember if it was actually CNN, but there were a number of journalists that, you know, got kicked out, whatever, and we're supposed to pretend that this is some affront to free speech, as though obviously Julian Assange isn't rotting in Belmarsh and isn't about to be sentenced to 170 years in prison for telling the truth about United States war crimes. But you know, we just have no. I lost my train of thought there. We
But you're right.
basically
Like,
have been put into this position where everything is totally backwards, and if you speak out against it, then you are like an enemy of the state. Not just, you're an enemy of the people. You are actively endangering people's lives, and you must be silenced at any costs. And free speech be damned, freedom of movement be damned. All of these supposed principles, just like Ukrainian lives, have been deemed to be totally expendable in the interest of this broader proxy war on Russia.
Yeah, it's Orwellian, but I feel like Orwell was part of, it was just almost like, here's a manual of what's going to happen. Take it, read it, and this is it. I mean, this is exactly it. And I remember having that conversation with Wyatt about how he's like, when you get that Russia state, you're not going to see any views. As soon as I got it, I would retweet RT stuff and RT would get so many views. And I was talking to my my colleague, and I was like, Rachel, I don't think I'm going to get it. Or she was like, I don't think you're going to get it because you would have gotten it already and blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, I don't know. I don't put it past them to give it to me because it was so long after. And sure enough, there it is. And as soon as that happens, guys, I kid you not, I'll get like thousands of likes on a video and it'll be like 200 views. And that is impossible. It's impossible. It's impossible, guys. So we're not kidding here when we say they are trying to silence that, put that scarlet letter mark on you, trying to silence you. But it's funny because most of the responses I get are, hey, this makes me want to follow you more. So I think in spite of that, Wyatt, I think it's kind of like, in a way, raising the profile, but it's really just telling how, like, I don't buy that I have 200 views on a video that has like 1,000 likes. Like, come on,
it's
man.
Bullshit. It's obviously bullshit. And on some level, you're right. There is this kind of Streisand effect where it's like, oh, I'm not supposed to watch this? Oh, why not? What is it that is so subversive about this that I'm not allowed to watch it? But they don't tell you that with the subversion. They tell you that with the scarlet letter, that Russia's state affiliated media. But with the actual videos, you don't really understand that as just an observer, just like looking at this video. You might say, huh, that's weird that 300 people retweeted this and it has 250 views. That seems weird. But you don't actually necessarily put it together until you realize, oh, this is all part of this broader program, this broader campaign to silence people, to delegitimize. And it's not just that, you know, there's this Nafo, quote unquote, you know, troll army that's been set into motion. And this is something that I saw firsthand when I reported about the coup in Bolivia, when I reported about it even before it happened, when I said, hey, there's a coup about to happen in Bolivia. And there's this woman, Janice Bacadasa, who is leading this. And she is a Harvard Kennedy School graduate. And she is best friends with Sergei Popovich, the founder of Otpor, the first color revolution, who created this whole playbook for all the color revolutions that came to pass afterwards, all throughout Eastern Europe, all throughout Latin America, you know, all throughout the rest of the world. And you know, lo and behold, I got attacked by all these bots. All, you know, the coup in Bolivia happened October 2019. October, November 2019, all these accounts were created September, October, November 2019. They all spoke perfect English, which, by the way, nobody in Bolivia does except for just the children of the ruling elite. And they all, you know, had the same agenda, and they all claimed to speak on behalf of the Bolivian people. And now we're seeing it in overdrive. This is like, this Nafo bullshit is like the far and away. It's like it was all leading up to this. It was all leading up to this one massive bot army. It's not just bots. It's CIA. It's 720th Military Intelligence Brigade, I believe. 48 Army Intelligence. It's NATO, obviously. It's a whole bunch of deranged MPs from the Baltic states. It's a whole bunch of underemployed defense contractors and fat guys who think they're Jason Bourne. And it's like all these motherfuckers are all just like descending into this one big disgusting stew of make-believe, like, you know, anti-Russian, like they all think they're Rambo. They all think they're just like singularly taking down, you know, the handful of them that are real human beings that aren't actual bots. And, you know, to me, it's like, I've seen it before. I've seen the same movie before. I know how it ends. And I know who are the actors. I know who the directors are. And yeah, I'm not surprised, which is why I don't engage with these people. I block all of them. All of them. I run through the block lists because for a while it was like, okay, you guys are actually, and your interaction is getting my posts out there. At this point, it's not doing anything. I don't need help from the Nafo bot army. You know, it feels like we're in an information war. And so this whole concept of free speech, if we lived in a system where free speech was actually respected, I wouldn't do this at all. You know what I mean? I wouldn't block these people. I'd let them say whatever they want. But they're not operating on free speech. They're using a bot army to manipulate things and to artificially inflate their ratings. So it's like, well, am I going to let you manipulate the things that I say and you know, treat me as basically a target and victimize me in this sense? Like, no, you know, blocked, reply hidden. Like, these are my little two tools of fighting back against your obvious NATO-backed information warfare campaign that is subjected directly to me. Thank God it's just the information war, because I prefer that to the direct warfare that the Kiev regime is launching on us straight up with artillery attacks.
Mm-hmm. Ladies and gentlemen, we're joined by Wyatt Reed of Sputnik News and, of course, Fiorella RT. We are surrounded by Russians. We were talking about what happened the other day with Wyatt. Very fortunate that he was a little late getting back to his hotel as it was hit by Ukrainian militia, is what I like to say, because it isn't a standing army. It just seems like a bunch of mercs and a bunch of weapons that's provided by the West. This isn't the normal type of military. He was put on a kill list not too long ago for going to the referendum. He is joining us today. Fam, if you got any other questions for Wyatt, please go right ahead.
Yeah, so my question, Wyatt, is a lot of people some in Russia, I've my experience, and a lot now in the United States are saying, damn, like Republicans are better. Republicans might save us, right? Biden is so awful. Look, he's getting us so close to nuclear war, which is true. Having been now on the east side, right, on the east, and seeing how things are from that perspective, have you changed your political perspective, or do you think that Republicans are the lesser of evils, that they're somehow going to save us from the neoliberal neocon establishment, or do you think it's still all of it? Because personally, for me, I remember the Bush years, of course, vaguely, but I remember them, and I remember the fact that they were the ones that were pushing war, and a lot of these people have joined with the neoliberals, the neocons and the neoliberals have joined hands. Is there any sort of solace in thinking the Republican Party would take us away from nuclear war?
I mean, I'm not a lesser of two evils guy, but the fact that we have articles coming out in mainstream media very worried about, if the Republicans take over the House, how are we going to continue this uninterrupted supply of weapons to the Zelensky regime? I mean, I take more stock in what mainstream media worries about and frets about than what either side says. If this is their concern, then on some level I have to be like, well, maybe that does mean that Republicans are less likely. If the Republicans take back the House, then it is less likely for this just constant, ceaseless supply of tens of billions of dollars every month of U.S. manufactured weapons to continue to be supplied to this regime in Kiev, so that they can continue these attacks on not just journalists like myself, but especially the civilian population of the Donbass. I mean, on some level, it's hard for me to be like, well, actually, the Republicans, aren't going to do this, just because they're the only people at this point that are saying, like, hey,
shit.
maybe we should spend this on
Wyatt, we lost
American interests. You hear
No,
me?
we got him.
Fam, what do you
No?
think about that?
Well, I mean, listen, they're trying to move us back into the lesser of two evil bullshit once again. But we can remember why some of us had joined the Democratic Party in the first place. It wasn't because we were rah hooray for the Democratic Party. It's their role that they played in Iraq. The Wolfowitz Doctrine,
Right.
the Karl Roves, all these people over here, they're the same type of people. So I'm not playing by it, because even though the Democrats went and were very corrupt within business deals within the Ukraine, it would have never been possible had it not been for Lindsey Graham and John McCain going there, standing with fucking the Azov battalion, screaming that we need to take on Russia, Russia, Russia. So I'm not playing that game whatsoever. The other day on the radio, I heard freaking Sean Hannity say these words, and you're going to laugh. Ready? This is the most important election of our time. We got to vote Republican. No. I'm not playing that game anymore. That's why I'm seeking a third party, a party that's been consistent, looking at this Libertarian Party, because they are anti-regime. They don't want to get involved because of blowback. And if you look over the last 30 years in Congress, other than Cynthia McKinney, it's only been Ron Paul, a Libertarian, to be completely anti-war. So I am not going to be fooled by this. And I'll be having a conversation with somebody about it tomorrow, fam, as we have 3 guests, not 2. So.
Do you guys, am I back now? Can you?
Yeah.
You're back.
Okay, so I broadly agree with what you're saying, Pasta. I do have to say, though, that some of the stuff that the Republicans are saying, I don't really see them backing down, and I will explain why. Because with the polarization, the politicization of Russia, and the injection of Russia directly by the Clinton machine as the singular excuse for why she lost the 2016 election, Russia somehow did become like a partisan issue. It became something that Republicans, because they hate liberals so much, there is a segment of Republicans that likes Russia more than they like liberals. You know what I mean? And so, there is a faction of them. And Republicans actually believe in what they're saying more than the Democrats. That's something else that I believe, for better or for worse.
Right.
You know, sometimes that worked out to the worst, but sometimes, in this case, I think it works out for the better. I haven't seen any of the liberals, any of these people like Ro Khanna that, you know, a few
None of the
years ago
squad. Yeah.
said that we should not be supplying weapons to the Azov battalion. We should not be giving weapons to open Nazis. Where the hell are they? They're
Yeah.
nowhere to be seen. They are nowhere. And now we have Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is more of an anti-fascist than the entire squad. She's the only one objecting to giving heavy weaponry to Nazis.
Yeah. Well,
And
Matt
you know,
Gaetz too.
how insane is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
Matt Gaetz too. I get it. It's these, but once again, I don't know where they would be had they known that the majority in their party is going to be able to shield them. So they can make these statements and do whatever, but they know it's not going to come to fruition because the heart and soul of the Republican Party is for this war. Let's not forget that the treaty with Russia for nuclear weapons ended under Donald Trump. No Republican out there was saying anything. It was only Tulsi Gabbard at the time speaking against it. And Liz Cheney was fighting back against it. She's the one who led the charge to make sure that that treaty expired. Also, Donald Trump with the whole Zelensky thing where they tried to impeach him for talking about, you know, this whole situation. They were very critical because he wasn't sending the weaponry until he got the answers he wanted. But as soon as he got the answers he wanted, off the weapons went. So on paper, when it comes to policy, I'm not being fooled. Both of these parties got us here. Both of these parties are not going to get us out of it. We have to look elsewhere. So that's where I stand on the third party situation.
And
Yeah, it's a good point.
And I just want to say, like, when it comes to China, let's move, like, forget Russia. Like, let's say, you know, Russia gets, you know, half of Ukraine and NATO somehow doesn't destroy the rest of the world. And that's like a best case scenario. And, you know, they just continue the sanctions and they continue acting like Russia is like the enemy, but they know they can't beat Russia. China, let's say Donald Trump or a Republican wins. China is like their number one enemy. I mean, they are dying to go to war with China, So that's the thing. And of course, Latin America, you see people like Ron DeSantis wanting to go into Cuba, wanting to get rid of any sort of socialist entities in Latin America. So for that reason, I think, I do think I agree with Pasta in terms of like, you know, I yes, maybe right now in this moment, Republicans are the lesser of evils and more Republicans are speaking out against this war. Like, I agree. I haven't seen a single Democrat, not a Bernie Sanders, not an AOC, not a squad, talking about this, but the so-called fascists, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz, who was also called like a white supremacist, are the ones arguing against weapons for Nazis. Like, why are they doing it? I don't know. Maybe they have their interest. Same with Trump. Why is he saying what he's saying? You know, he's campaigning. You know, these people are campaigning. But at the same time, I think it creates this idea that, okay, well, maybe people will try with Republicans. And I think that's also the goal. I think the goal is to keep us going back and forth and not create.
So I agree. And let me make this one point though. The impetus for let's not go to war with Russia, this is not a top-down phenomenon on the Russian side. This is or on the Republican side. This is a base-up phenomenon. This is people who vote Republican overwhelming, and there have been numerous articles published that say exactly this, that this is something that the Republican base overwhelmingly rejects. This is a phenomenon where Republicans are calling up their representatives, maybe just because they're the ones that still believe in this kind of, you know, congressional representation nonsense. To me, it's kind of nonsense, but to them, they believe in it. And maybe that's why. But to me, this isn't like a top-down phenomenon. This is something that the base is saying, like, we don't want to go to war with Russia because we hate the liberals and the Democrats more than we do. I guess I gotta go find a new location here to stream from. More than we do.
Is that lights out?
Know, the Russians, you know, and yeah, I guess so.
Wow.
Hold on.
Your timer on the door.
Well, also, we'll play Trump's thing in a minute, but I just want to say to Wyatt's point, it's because the Republicans stem from a nationalist perspective. Like we want America
Sure.
to be America. We want America to be, you know, what it is. We don't want this globalism. They're more aware of that. And that globalism comes with NATO. And so that's why you see them kind of see the light when it comes to this, because in for a lot of us, I mean, I count myself in that, it seems that Putin is fighting, like Russia is fighting for its existence, but it's also fighting NATO and this globalist, you know, World Economic Forum attempt to pretty much make every country in Europe and the West the same. And I think that element is really what's driving so many Republicans towards liking Putin, because Putin
And
is
that's a
very
real
much
thing.
Russia.
That's a real thing. You know,
Yeah,
that's a real
globalism.
phenomenon.
Of course it is. We know
The
globalism
World
is a
Economic Forum shit, like that's
Yeah.
a real thing. And the Democrats just want to pretend that you're like some anti-Semitic conspiracy theorist if you bring it up.
Yeah. Well, let's also
And-
be honest, Wyatt, you know, and I'm going to wait for you to get to some light and then you can respond to as well. But it's also affecting them. The soldiers that are coming home and killing themselves, 22 a day, 20 of them are white male from the Midwest, it's middle America. That's the Trump base over there, right? You know what I'm saying? So now it's affecting them. The whole opioid epidemic affected them. So that's why they had a different lens on when it came to big pharma and it came to the whole shot. So the fact that it's affecting them too as well, and this is the thing, I won't vote Republican because I think that they'll change things, right? But I do appreciate the rhetoric. And I want to play this Donald Trump video over here because this is what Donald Trump is saying and not the Ro Khannas and not the squad and the people we thought. Take a look.
Of a peaceful end to the war in Ukraine, or we will end up in World War III and there will be nothing left of our planet, all because stupid people didn't have a clue. They didn't have a clue. They really don't understand. I rebuilt our military. I rebuilt our nuclear power. They don't understand what they're dealing with, the power of nuclear. We must demand the
power of nuclear. They don't understand the power of nuclear.
Shit.
I mean, that is Donald Trump, ladies and gentlemen. That is not Ro Khanna. That is not the squad. That is not any leftists. And I can't believe they're going on. Like, they still want to try to distract us with bullshit, and they got to put up tweets and going, shh, you voted for a proxy war. You're responsible. I don't want to hear your opinions on abortion. I don't want to hear your opinions on anything else, on school loans. You're voting to support this proxy war in which women and children have been bombed endlessly in the Donbass for 9 years. So, you there? Why do you frozen?
Yeah. I am. And on some level, it's like, I don't even really care if he believes it. You know, I'm just happy to hear somebody say it. It's the truth. And and even if he doesn't believe it, even if he's just saying it just to get votes, somebody has to say that. Somebody needs to be saying that. And I wish that the Democrats would. They obviously won't. None of them will.
Not one. Not one.
You know, to me, and again, I'm not a voter. I don't vote in American elections. I just don't. I don't believe in them. But I can't help but feel that, you know, I'm happy on some level that at least somebody is saying it. And even if, you know, I only believe so much about what's Trump saying, because if he really believed in it, why didn't he pardon Julian Assange? You know what I mean? But somebody's saying it. It's an important message. I value the message over the messenger sometimes. And right now, feeling like we could be on the cusp of nuclear war, like, I don't care who's saying it. It just, it needs to be said.
Well, let me tell you something else that hasn't been said either, Wyatt. China. Go ahead, Fee.
And in some ways,
Well,
though, I agree with you, right? Because it's like somebody powerful with that platform saying it does something. And I think that's what that's going to do, is going to push more people to the right. I think it's going to push more people towards the Republican Party. And I think, in my personal opinion, I think that's by design. And I think that the whole illusion of Democrat and Republican isn't real. I think at this moment, this is why it doesn't matter in the United States whether you consider yourself left or right, or Democrat or Republican. It doesn't really matter because I know where I fall ideologically, right? I mean, you guys know where I fall ideologically, but we're having this conversation, Pasto. You're having this conversation where we're talking positively about Donald Trump. And I mean, I consider myself, you know, very far left. You know, I believe in a lot of socialist policies, a lot of communist policies. And for me to say that, it's because we're so close to nuclear war that if it's a Republican saying it in the United States, I don't really care where you fall. I don't really care about the ideology you believe in. However, I'm going in that knowing that this is the illusion of the duopoly, right? We know our country is run by the corporate national security military state apparatus, and that's really what we have to focus on, in my opinion, to defeat it.
So-
That's what's fighting Russia right now.
I also want to say
do
something really
genuinely
quickly. Wyatt,
believe.
though.
Yeah,
Go
okay.
ahead, buddy.
Let
You
me
go
say
first.
this last little point.
Good.
I do genuinely believe, first of all, the reason that so many of these national security state creeps hated Trump was because they didn't believe that they could control him. And I do genuinely believe that on some level, if we had Trump as president, we would not be this close to World War III. And I realize that might sound crazy to some people, but I do not see Trump
It doesn't sound
getting
crazy.
led down the primrose path and being talked into this and being some like totally senile guy who's basically not even there, that people like Anthony Blinken and the Clinton people can just you know, even if he wanted to avoid World War III, he's not even there to do it. Like, no, I do genuinely believe that Donald Trump would be less likely to bring us into a nuclear war with Russia than Joe Biden. I
But-
do. And, you know, that doesn't make me a Republican. You know, it just means like I'm just kind of trying to understand the facts on the ground and look at objectively like whose interests is it in to start World War III? Who has more desire? Who has more of a voter base that wants World War III? Because the Democrats are braying for it. They're like braying for nuclear warfare. They like and the fan base, you know what I mean? The electoral base of the Democrats is like, why haven't you tried to start World War III yet?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
insane.
Well, let
That's
me say this much.
insane.
It is crazy, and they are stupid. You know what I'm saying? They wanted to kill, you know, Putin, the anti-LGBT president, needs to be taken out, you know. But the Republicans, the ones in office, and this is the thing I'm trying to say, if you believe that Donald Trump is a rogue guy, then he's not the typical Republican. The typical Republicans are calling for regime change, openly calling for regime change, which is worse than the Democrats, what they're doing too as well. They might be nodding it, but you got Lindsey Graham talking about pouring it on.
Oh, but
calling
Lindsey
for
Graham doesn't
regime change.
represent the Republican base.
He's
Lindsey
an
Graham doesn't
establishment
represent them at
Republican, and
all.
so is Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell went there.
Yeah.
You got the picture with him and Koki Smurf. So
He
it's not
doesn't
like he's the
represent-
leader
he
of the
does not
Republicans.
represent the Republican base.
Who
But
represents
in that
the
way,
Republican
the
base?
Democrat leaders, they do represent their base. They do represent what their base feels.
What's left
And
of
that's
it?
the difference.
What's left of it, if there's anything left? I don't know. I once
How
again,
can you say that? How can you say that? The Democrat base wants to go to war with Russia, dude. That is the difference. The Republican base does not. That is my point. It doesn't
the
make me a
Trump
Republican
base
say that.
doesn't. The Trump base doesn't, but the Republican establishment does.
Yes, but the
You're voting when
base-
you
I'm
vote
talking
for
about
the
base.
Republicans.
I'm
You're
talking about
voting for the
base.
establishment because they're calling the shots.
You think I'm telling people to vote for establishment Republicans?
No. I'm
I
not.
am
I'm not.
saying that the base of the Republican Party does not want war with Russia, and the base of the Democratic Party does. That's all I'm saying. If you can refute it, I would love to hear it.
Well, I'll let Fee refute it if she wants to.
No,
I mean,
no,
I
I think you're talking about two different things here, because there's a difference between the Republicans in power and the Republican base that is out like in the
Which
the,
is why I
the
use the
working-
words base. I am not talking about the Republicans in power. I'm talking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
the base.
Yeah.
I know,
So
but
the
this
Republican-
conversation started with you're going to vote Republican over Democrat because the Republicans are better.
I'm
I
not
hear
voting.
that.
I already said this.
No,
but I'm
I know.
telling you,
I know.
the base. This is my point. The base of the Republican Party does not want war with Russia. The base of the Democratic Party does. That is my
Yeah.
point. If
I
you
would
can
agree with
refute
that.
it, I would love to
But
hear
they
it.
want war with China.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Okay, are we on the verge of nuclear war with China?
Well,
Hold my
After
beer,
Russia.
Wyatt. Hold my beer. What's going
Well,
on in
let's cross that bridge
Taiwan?
when we come to it. Let's cross
What
that
I'm
bridge when
saying,
we
the
come to it.
war across the board. The war across the board. I hear you. That's
I'm
why I'm
not-
not voting. Sorry, that's why I'm
I'm
not
not
voting.
saying that if that were an option, they wouldn't, but that is not on the table right now, which is why I'm not talking about it,
And
which is why I'm not in Beijing. I'm in Donetsk.
and it's interesting that you say that, because a lot of people that I've talked to in Moscow feel that way. A lot of Russians, and I understand why they feel that way. That's why I did a thread, saying, I left the Democratic Party long ago, but I would never join the Republican Party. But the reason I said that is, I said a lot of people outside of the United States right now, like in Russia, do feel like the Republicans are the lesser of evils, because they're the ones that are opposing this attempt to go towards nuclear war, at least at the face of it, right? I don't think I think if we had a Republican president, we would be in another situation, perhaps with China. But right now, the only opposition is coming from the Republican base. I agree. It's not coming from the Democrat base. The Democratic base was the same base that literally wanted to have everybody stuck in their homes, completely compulsory vaccinated. And it's as you said before, this has been a sort of multiple propaganda push, right? It started with Russiagate 6 years ago, and then it went into the election, where Pasta and I witnessed, like, okay, you can't talk about the election, you can't even say that, well, our elections haven't been fair in a long time. And then, of course, January 6th, when we were there, when everybody called it a coup, we know it wasn't a coup. We know it was a bunch of people just wanting their election to be validated. We study elections all over the world. We know that our elections are bullshit compared to the rest of them. And so then what came right after was the COVID pandemic, and that everything where you couldn't disagree on the January 6th thing, or you were a fascist, right-wing, white supremacist. You couldn't disagree on the election, or you were a fascist, right-winger, white supremacist. You couldn't disagree on the pandemic, or you were a fascist, right-wing, white supremacist. This has been the labeling, right? Or a Russian propagandist now. It transferred so easily because it's the same tactics, it's the same psychological structure. And that's where we're at right now. And it's I don't think it's a Democrat Republican thing. I think it's a globalist national security state apparatus thing, and they're the establishment Republicans and the establishment Democrats. All the Democrats are pretty much establishment. They're joining hands, and all the Republicans in power pretty much save the few ones that we've mentioned, and save the libertarians that do speak out, are pretty much outside of it. So this is where we're at. And I think it's just irrelevant to talk about, a Democrat or Republican. It's more of like, who's really going to stand in opposition to this attempt to really take over dominance of the world. And I think that's what it sounds insane, but I think that's where we're at right now.
Well,
By the
I will
way-
say that the Republicans actually got their choice of of candidate. They wanted Donald Trump, they got him. We wanted Bernie Sanders, who did we get? So
Joe Biden.
they want no war with Russia. They are more likely to get it than we want no war with China. You know what I mean? We don't have any control over the Democratic Party. The Republicans have control over their party in a way
Yeah, the
more
Tea Party
comprehensive
did
way
it.
than we do.
Yeah, the Tea Party, which became a party. By the way, this is $1 and over on the Rumble Rants. We've been getting a few Rumble Rants over here. It says, between the two parties, the one that's not in office will promote to give the people what they want. Then they will get in power. Then they will break their
Sure.
promises and backstab us.
I understand it, but that doesn't really contradict anything that I've said, which is that the Republican base actually holds way more power over their politicians than the Democratic base does.
Yeah,
And
I
the
mean, look
Republican
who
base
charged
does
into the
not
Capitol.
want nuclear war with Russia, which is overwhelmingly right now the far and away the number one threat to the human race all throughout the planet. So,
I see what you're saying,
address that fact. Don't address something that I didn't say.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Wyatt. And I think, ultimately we'll see what happens. And I think none of us want nuclear war. And right now, I think that's the existential threat that is happening at this very moment. Fam, any other questions?
No, I'm just waiting for Wyatt to get back into town so we can crack a beer and yell about this in peace when nobody's around and scream at each other and stuff and like that. Well, we went to Brazil, Wyatt. Are you going to go to the second round of Brazil and screw us over again the way you did in Colombia? Because we're like, what is Wyatt doing? Wyatt's not going to the first round. All right, let's go. We're going to get it. It's going to be over. It went to a second round. He got to be there for the second round. We go to Brazil. Let's get it over in the first round. It's not over. Let's go to Brazil.
We'll see. I might be going to Lisbon because there's like a tech conference there. Noam Chomsky's going to be there. Some evil Eastern European heads of state are going to be there. Max and Aaron and Anya, I think, are going to be there from the Gray Zone. It's going to be this bizarre collection of people. So I'm seeing if I might be able to get an interview with Noam Chomsky when he's there, because that would be amazing. He's one of the few voices left with any sanity or clarity left in the West in terms of what's happening with Russia, especially on the left. So if I can go there, I might actually go there instead of the Brazil thing. I don't know yet, but I will definitely let you guys know.
Yeah. Well, he sucked on vaccines, but that sucks. But we won't talk about this. This is from the Zach, and this is in the Rockfin. He says, Pasta, I didn't get a chance. I didn't have a chance to let you to tell you I loved your chat with Ryan. Maybe naive, but I actually gave me this strange feeling I might even describe as hope. Also, there's a growing critique for Desmond. Fitz is a prominent voice. Dr. Peter something started writing about it too, including an open letter to Desmond, who replied, but I last heard it was to ignore the terms of criticism. So, fam, I didn't tell you this, but I know we have an interview tomorrow at 11 with Vanessa. We have one at 12 with Dan Cohen. We also got one at 1 o'clock with Dr. Peter McCullough. So we are loaded tomorrow with 3 interviews. But that's going to happen. Dr. McCullough will be joining the show, one of the leading voices when it comes to what's going on. A lot of news going on with COVID. We will talk about it tomorrow when we are not on YouTube because we have to self-censor ourselves. Blah, blah. Anyways, Wyatt, please.
Thank you so much. I hope you keep safe. And if you do come to Moscow in the next week or so, let me know because I will be back in the motherland.
My God.
Hell yeah. No, I definitely will. I'm not sure exactly how long I'm going to be down here. 1 week, 2 weeks. There's definitely a lot more stuff I want to get done while I'm here. I will keep you guys updated about it and definitely be posting about it. But when I get back to Moscow, we definitely got to get together. It's been way too long. And Pasta, when I make it back to our motherland, I will.
Old man's been asking about you, by the way. The old man with the the guy walks around with no shirt. He's been asking, "Where's Wyatt? Is he okay?"
Well, dude, I'll have to come personally and make sure he understands I'm doing just fine.
All right, Wyatt. It was fun talking to you. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
Love you,
thanks
Wyatt.
again for having me on. Love you too. It's so great to talk to you all. Hope to see you again soon.
You got it, brother. Fam. Let's make us both big. That's what. Hold on, fam.
That's what she said.
Fam, I want to introduce you to my favorite Aqua Teen Hunger Force people, so you know exactly who they are every single time I talk about Fam.
I watched it with my friends when I smoked weed.
Well, just in case.
Back a few years ago.
Aqua Teen Hunger Force going here, fam.
Are we going to get a copyright?
Don't have laser eyes because it was my...
Hey, we're barbecuing here. Why don't you come on up?
Yeah, and bring a cold 6.
Okay. How do I do that? I mean, do you have some sort of particle transmitter or...
What do we look like? A couple of nerds?
Totally a particle transmitter.
Oh, yes. One of those. We have that. Don't get these gross shanks of flesh out of my dominion.
Oh, that is great. Why don't you burn the ship down while you're
Shut up! I have an amazing plan to betray our new friend.
I thought the plan was to.
I just wanted to have the Aquitaine Hunger Force. Thank you for muting me. Well, I forgot, fam. Well,
Yeah,
we
you
had some
forget,
Germans.
and then it just ruins my freaking life when you forget. So that's why. Anyway, Tim,
yeah.
I have things to do. I have to prep for my flight to the motherland. Don't tell Deep State. I'm not going to
They
tell
already
you.
know, fam. They listen to everything we do, guys. That's it. Tomorrow we have a big show, 11 o'clock. Vanessa Beeley will be on the show. Then at noon, we will be on with Dan Cohen. And then at 1, we will be on with Dr. McCullough. We'll probably figure something out, fam. Maybe you interview Vanessa by yourself. We do Dan together, and then I'll do Dr. McCullough alone, or we can figure something out. But we do have a loaded show tomorrow. 3 shows, and yeah, that's it, fam. I just wanted to get your opinion on Tulsi leaving the Democratic Party real quick, because it is a hot topic.
So she said she's leaving the I want to clarify this for people. She said she's leaving the Democratic Party, but as far as I read, she never said she was joining the Republican Party.
No, but she has been open about the fact that she can't run third party because the system's not set up for her to run third party. So if she does run, it will be with the Republicans. And she's just completely, that was such a dog whistle. I don't care what anybody says. That was BS today, talking about the whiteness and the borders again, not talking about where it comes from, where immigration comes from, the fact that she's still serving in the military and going to do actions in Africa to fight jihadists. I mean, she knows that the same country that funds the jihadists is the same one to pretend to act like they're removing them. It was a bunch of fugaziness. And I am just not all there. And Sam, thank you for saying Ron Paul team. We finally agree on something, fam.
Yeah, and I think, again, I agree. I don't think we should join the Democrat or the Republican Party. And Wyatt doesn't vote. I stopped voting. I mean, I know the elections are happening here all over the place. No, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm with you if you want to try to unionize or want to try to city council take over city council. You could do more with local stuff, but as far as voting, we don't have fair elections. So I'm not even with Pasta when it comes to getting the libertarians, or even with our friend Gloria about the Greens, because they have no power. Our electoralism in the United States is dead because the people don't have the power. And I think the only people, and I agree with Wyatt on this, that have shown that they will challenge their base are the Republicans, because the left wasn't the ones that stormed into the Capitol, right? Yeah. That's what we wanted to do for the longest time. And when it happened, because it was Republicans, they vilified everybody and called them all white supremacists, and called me a white supremacist sympathizer because I said Ashley Babbitt shouldn't have been shot. So this has been a long time coming. Everything, that we've been talking about this for a long time. The World Economic Forum. We've been talking about the Great Reset for a while. Wyatt said we were right about the pandemic stuff, because guys, it's the same type of psychology that they used then, they're using now. And it's nothing new. The only difference is who is the evil guy. It's now, not the vaccinated or the unvaccinated anymore. Now it's the Russians and anybody sympathetic, or even just trying to go away from the narrative of the establishment. So they will find a villain, they will vilify whoever, and that's where we're at. So we need your help, of course, always, to get us out there, to get this show out there, and to get a lot of these voices, including now my own, because like I said, you could watch, you could see 2,000 likes on a tweet I have, but you'll only see 500 views, which is what I've been noticing. And it's bullshit, guys. It's bullshit.
Yes, guys, that's it. We'll see you tomorrow for a loaded day. A lot of things going on. Of course, I'll be in the morning show. Then we'll roll right into these other shows. 3 guests tomorrow. Vanessa Beeley at 11. This is all Pacific Standard Time. Vanessa and you will be discussing what exactly, fam?
We're going to be discussing the double standards in media with Russia and Ukraine situation, and also how that happened in her experience in Syria, because, she's one of the most experienced people that was on the ground in Syria.
Absolutely.
And we'll be discussing the parallels of that as well.
And Dan Cohen will be discussing Haiti, and Dr. McCullough will be discussing his recent expulsion, plus The numbers, the actual numbers of VAERS, when you look at it from what the CDC guidelines are, that it's 40 times underreported. There's an article that came out. Dr. McCullough has been talking about it, and also fan Gavin Newsom with his new law that he signed into play, stating that he can now pull the licenses, or they can pull the licenses from doctors who don't speak of the COVID narrative the way they want to. So any dissenting voices can be pulled. That's it for today. I am Pastor Jardula.
And I am Fiorella
And
Isabel,
I am on the ones and twos.
Russia State affiliated media.
That's right. Convo out.
That's Vidania.